Hello, welcome, and once again, a very happy new year to all of you. My name is Vikram Chandra, and you're watching This World, a show where we take you through the week's biggest stories and help you understand them in as clear a manner as we can manage. The year's first week could not have been more eventful. From airstrikes and blasts in West Asia to an earthquake in Japan, also a burning plane that the world could not stop talking around. We will take you through all these stories over the next 30 minutes and also a special report on Bangladesh as that country votes for its next leader. Make sure you remain tuned till the end. But our cover story is from West Asia, where the Red Sea is now on the boil. The new year started off with a face-off between the Houthi fighters and the American forces in the Red Sea. The Houthis had reportedly attacked a Singapore-flagged ship. They were trying to board this commercial vessel when choppers from the USS Eisenhower carrier group arrived at the scene. The Houthi fighters reportedly opened fire at the choppers. The American troops retaliated and they sank 3 Houthi boats. At least 10 Houthi fighters died. Yemen's Houthis have vowed to avenge the deaths. On Monday, news broke of Iran's warship entering the Red Sea. The statement read, and I quote, "Ongoing Houthi attacks in the Red Sea are illegal, unacceptable, and profoundly destabilizing. There's no lawful justification for intentionally targeting civilian shippings and naval vessels. Attacks on vessels, including commercial vessels using unmanned aerial vehicles, small boats, and missiles, including the first use of anti-ship ballistic missiles against such vessels, are a direct threat to the freedom of navigation that serves as the bedrock of global trade in one of the world's most critical waterways," unquote. Now, that statement was signed by 12 countries, among them Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Canada, Japan, and Singapore. But the question is, what are they going to do about any of this? Since November, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have carried out as many as 25 attacks on commercial vehicles in the Red Sea. These attacks have sent shockwaves through the global shipping industry, and it's very clear why that should be the case. And that's because nearly 15% of the global seaborne trade passes through the Red Sea. This includes 8% of global grain trade, 12% of seaborne traded oil, and 8% of the world's LNG. That's how critical the Red Sea route is. These waters have now become extremely dangerous, leaving most shipping companies with no option but to reroute their vessels. So instead of now taking the Suez Canal, as we've been telling you, many of these ships are now taking a longer route. They are going around the Cape of Good Hope, which is adding to cost and time. And it is you and I who stand to foot the bill, because shipping companies have already announced a price hike. Reports say that rates of cargo traveling from Asia to Northern Europe has more than doubled this week alone. Carriers are quoting prices of up to $4,000 per 40-foot container. For Mediterranean shipments, carriers are quoting more than $6,000 per 40-foot container. All in all, there is a surcharge of around $2,700 per container. This war is triggering inflation. That inflation is going to hit you and it's going to hit me. So that brings us back to the central question. Yes, ultimatums are being made to the Houthis, but is anything actually going to be done? And what are the next steps in this? For more on that, we're now being joined by Dr. Ian Rolby, who's a maritime security analyst with IR Consilium. Thank you so much, Dr. Rolby, for joining. I just wanted to get your sense of the situation in the Red Sea. Now, we've seen this new ultimatum being given to the Houthis as well. What's your assessment of where this is actually leading to and where this is going?
Well, it obviously continues to escalate, and unfortunately, that is bad news for global shipping. At this point, it would be very well advised to avoid the Red Sea altogether while this continues to become a more dynamic situation. The exchange of fire between the United States and the Houthis the other day in support of the Maersk Conju that was being attacked certainly brought us into a new situation where hostile lethal fire back and forth between the two sides led to actual deaths. And that has brought us into a new place altogether. So we've seen all of the world sort of react in different ways. And 12 countries, now a 13th as well, have issued statements saying that the Houthis need to stop this. Unfortunately, though, that is unlikely to be persuasive towards the Houthis, and we're likely to see this continue.
Now, Dr. Ravi, I'll tell you what a lot of people are wondering. They're saying threats are being made at the Houthis, saying you've got to stop this, you've got to stop this, you've got to stop this, or there are going to be consequences. But then they keep on doing it, and there are no consequences. So people are sort of wondering why the US or any of the other partners aren't directly targeting the areas where the drones are taking off from where the attacks are coming. Because right now it almost sounds as if threats are being made to the Houthis, but the gloves are still very much on.
Well, Yemen's been at war for quite a while now, and things were, prior to this incident involving the Red Sea and the attacks on ships, Yemen was in a very fragile moment of trying to negotiate peace after a very long conflict. And so I think everybody's been a bit reserved, trying to maintain hope and optimism that that peace was achievable. Unfortunately, it does not look like the context today will allow for that. And so we are probably going to see a change in posture as we continue to see these attacks against global commerce, against the global economy. But people have been reserved in hopes of trying to maintain some degree of calm and balance within Yemen. Actually attacking sites in Yemen would be a very big escalation in this whole situation. And that would certainly change the equities vis-a-vis the government of Yemen's position as well as the Houthis' position.
So the latest ultimatum that we've now seen, is this a step in saying that, look, we've been trying to be patient because there are no good options really in Yemen, but if this sort of a thing continues, maybe there have to be a change in direction. Maybe there have to be some more direct consequences for the Houthis.
I honestly believe that we are taking the wrong approach in the sense that we are putting too much attention towards the Houthis themselves. We need to put attention towards everybody else to come together to stop this threat to the global economy. The Houthis are desperate for legitimacy, credibility, visibility, and relevance. And unfortunately, our statements towards them are giving them that. Right now, it would be best to try to delegitimize them through actually recognizing them as a terrorist organization. They're not even all that well organized, but they are acting as terrorists, and they need to be labeled as such in order to diminish their position as a legitimate negotiating party for control of Yemen. Right now, they are purporting to be the Yemen Navy when they launch these attacks, and that is a misnomer. That's a farce, and we need to call that out as it is, but not treat them as a legitimate, rational actor in the international community.
Right, we've also been seeing a lot of escalation around Iran in the last couple of weeks. Those bomb blasts, of course, and not quite sure, who was responsible. Other statements coming out of Iran. How do you see the Iran factor? Is it going to become increasingly important?
It is, in that this is creating opportunities for Iran. I think Iran is enjoying having essentially let the Houthis perpetrate these attacks. They have not been directing them. They have been helping and supporting them, it seems. But this is the Houthis doing what the Houthis want to do. And it just happens to benefit the Iranians. And they are certainly mutually involved in the weaponry used, the targeting being used, and even the approach of targeting shipping very much derives from Iran. Iran has been doing a very impressive job of attacking global commerce for years. They have done this over decades, but in just the last few years, we've seen a whole series of attacks in 2019, month on month from March all the way through until the Abqaiq attack in September. Then again in 2021, leading up to the very intense attack on the Mercer Street that led to a couple of deaths. And we've seen a recent back and forth between the United States and Iran as well. And each time Iran uses the hostile aggression towards the maritime space, it has a very targeted message. It usually is targeting a specific interlocutor, whether it's Mohammed bin Zayed in UAE, Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, the United States, at one point then Prime Minister, the late Shinzo Abe of Japan. They're very targeted. The Houthis are much more erratic, and they are merchants of chaos. And unfortunately, that is now what we're dealing with. But both benefit each other in the sense that they are both indicating that there's an ability to sanction global maritime commerce through aggression.
So let me ask you directly, do you think there's a possibility that Iran could get dragged directly much further into this entire conflict?
I would not. I believe that the Chem Pluto attack was an attack by Iran. I don't quite understand why they would take that risk that close to India, other than to show that they're capable of it. But it certainly is possible that Iran will become more kinetically involved. Whether other states respond to Iran in the same way that we're responding to the Houthis, very much in question, because Iran presents a completely different concern for international affairs. The Houthis, though, we are providing way too much credibility to them the way we're approaching them at the moment.
Okay, Dr. Alvi, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. And let me just stay with Iran for a little while longer, because there's clearly escalating tension out there. On Wednesday, there were twin blasts in the Iranian city of Kerman. The blast hit a procession that was walking towards the tomb of slain Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. It was the 3rd of January, and it was the 4th anniversary of Soleimani's assassination. More than 100 of his supporters were killed in those blasts. More than 200 were injured. The first explosion was merely 700 meters from Soleimani's grave. The second was around a kilometer away. Now, ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack, but Iran has, in a sense, already named what it considers as the culprit. It was pointing fingers already at Israel. Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi warned Israel that it would, quote, pay a high price, unquote. Raisi said, and I'm quoting again, "I warn the Zionist regime, do not doubt that you will pay a heavy price for this crime and the crimes that you have committed." Now, a day before the twin blasts, a drone strike hit the Lebanese capital city, Beirut. It targeted an apartment in a Shiite district of Beirut, and it killed the Hamas deputy commander, Saleh al-Aruri. Hamas called the al-Aruri killing a cowardly assassination.
نؤكد أن اغتيال الاحتلال الصهيوني
We affirm that the assassination by the Zionist occupation of the great brother and national fighting leader, Sheikh Saleh al-Aruri, and his brothers of the movement's leadership and teams on the Lebanese lands is a complete terrorist act, a violation of Lebanon's sovereignty and expansion of Israel's hostility against our people and nation. The Zionist Nazi occupation is responsible for its repercussions.
وانتهاك لسيادة لبنان.
Now, Israeli forces have not confirmed or denied their involvement in that particular attack, but the IDF said it was in a strong state of readiness in the north. In other words, Israel is ready for a multi-front war, should it come to that. Saleh al-Aruri was 57 years old. He was the deputy chief of Hamas, and not surprisingly, he has been on Israel's radar for a while. In 2014, Israel accused al-Aruri of planning the kidnapping and killing of 3 Israeli teenagers in the West Bank. Al-Aruri was also accused of planning to overthrow the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. In 2015, the US designated al-Aruri as a global terrorist. It offered a $5 million reward for information on al-Aruri that could lead to his arrest. Al-Aruri is believed to have played a key role in planning the October 7 attacks. In fact, he reportedly met the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah shortly before the attack. He was also said to be the key link between Hezbollah and Hamas. Hezbollah has now vowed to avenge his death. And remember, Hezbollah is particularly close to Iran. Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah has said Hezbollah is not afraid of war. So what do you have here? Let's just put the pieces together. It's a clear case of escalating tensions. Iran is threatening Israel. Lebanon's leadership is accusing Israel of trying to drag it into a war. Hezbollah, operating out of Lebanon, is just short of sounding the war bugle. What happens next? Where do things go from here? Is West Asia walking towards an all-out war? Well, it's certainly a very difficult situation, and we're going to keep on updating you on the latest as developments continue to unfold. But let's turn our attention now to Japan, which also had a really bad week. This week, a series of powerful earthquakes struck Japan. It all began on New Year's Day when a 7.6 magnitude quake hit the Ishikawa province. The moment was caught on camera.
I'm now 65 years old and I have experienced big earthquakes many times. But this earthquake was completely different from those other earthquakes. It was really scary and long. The way it shook was also unusual.
Chaos followed. The city of Hiroshima was among the hardest hit. This is what it currently looks like. The infrastructure has been razed by the fire sparked by the quake. Many buildings have been burnt to the ground. On Wednesday, rain lashed the affected areas, triggering floods and raising fears of landslides. Meet Kohei Kirimato. He is 31 years old and he is an 8th generation lacquer artist. On Thursday, Kohei spent his day looking for his pet cats.
During the COVID pandemic, we took in a cat, and that was the start. It's 3 years old, and for 3 years, it always warmed my heart. So I hope they are found. I'm praying they are okay.
Thank you.
Kohei believes he will be able to build back the work that he has lost, but it's his cats that he worries about the most. But not far from this neighborhood, people were seen visiting destroyed homes and queuing for food. Minoru Hirano's neighborhood, for example, was mostly destroyed. He came back to his home to collect his boots.
My biggest worry, whether or not these people will be able to return here. It is scary and it's a genuine concern.
Monday's earthquake was followed by multiple aftershocks. Also, falling temperatures have made rescue efforts really difficult.
With regards to the disaster-hit zone, bad weather and further tremors are expected in the region. We ask local residents to be on alert for landslides and act with safety in mind.
Japan, remember, sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. The country accounts for about 20% of the world's earthquakes of magnitude 6 or higher. And every year, the people of Japan feel up to 2,000 quakes. This week's quake, though, was the deadliest to hit Japan since 2016. Over 80 people have died, and the race against time continues to rescue those trapped under the rubble. For Japan, things went from bad to worse as the week progressed. On Tuesday, a burning plane in Tokyo's Haneda airport caught the world's attention. The story begins at 4 p.m. local time on the 2nd of January. A Japan Airlines plane had taken off from Sapporo and it was headed to Tokyo's Haneda airport. There were 379 passengers and crew members on board. The plane landed in Tokyo on time, but upon landing, it met with an accident. The plane collided with a Coast Guard plane. The Coast Guard plane was taking off to Niigata, where it would join the earthquake relief and rescue operations. There were 6 members of the Coast Guard on board that plane. 5 of them died following the collision. Meanwhile, the passenger jet caught fire. Speaking to the local media, one passenger said she felt a bump while landing. She felt as if the plane collided with something. Visuals have emerged on social media of the chaos inside the aircraft following the impact. There are also visuals of the passengers evacuating the burning aircraft. All those on board managed to escape safely. That's from the passenger jet. But the Haneda airport had to shut down all runways. Flights were diverted to nearby airports. And the obvious question, of course, how could such a collision possibly have happened? How could 2 flights have been cleared for landing and takeoff from the same runway at the same time? Turns out they weren't. Transcripts of the ATC, or the air traffic control, show that the Japan airline A350 was cleared to land, but the Coast Guard Bombardier Dash 8 did not have permission for takeoff. It was told to taxi to holding point C5, not to take off. Now, you know what doesn't add up? The Coast Guard pilot acknowledged the ATC instruction given to him. Why then did he enter the runway? Unfortunately, we don't know. But before we wrap this week's show, let's quickly take a look at another developing story: the elections in Bangladesh. The Asian country is voting to elect its next government, and it's an important election, but the results seem to be a foregone conclusion because the main opposition party is boycotting the polls. We have all the basics covered for you in this special report.
Bangladesh
Bangladesh is holding general elections on the 7th of January. There are 350 seats in Bangladesh's parliament, the Jatiyo Sangshad. Only 300 members are elected and the remaining 50 seats are reserved for women. These women are nominated by the winning party or the winning coalition. This time, 1,896 candidates are vying for the 300 seats. 5.1% of these candidates are women, and this is a record high for Bangladesh. But this is not what is headlining the polls. The main opposition party, BNP or Bangladesh Nationalist Party, has boycotted the polls. BNP wanted incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to resign and let a caretaker government oversee the election. Hasina refused and BNP put its foot down. Not all voters are happy with this situation. On the 5th of January, police arrested anti-election protesters outside a mosque in Dhaka.
We are requesting everyone to boycott the election on January 7th. Nobody should go to a polling center. It is a rigged election.
This is a country of 170 million people. Of them, 120 million are eligible to vote. Women make up almost 50% of the voters' list. There are also around 15 million first-time voters. Now, what do they have in mind as they cast their ballot?
We are very happy with the infrastructure the government has developed so far. But prices of essentials are too high. We can't match our salaries with the daily staple food expenses. We can't eat properly. I expect the next government to take care of it.
What can I say about the elections? Whether or not I vote, Sheikh Hasina will come to power. Even if I don't vote, Sheikh Hasina will still come to power.
The incumbent Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is staring at an easy re-election. It will be her 4th straight term in office. Hasina has been in office since January 2009. She also served as Prime Minister between 1996 and 2001. Hasina is the leader of the Bangladesh Awami League. She has managed to win global plaudits for letting in Rohingya refugees who fled persecution in Myanmar. But her critics point at the condition of the Rohingya refugee camps. Right groups have also accused Hasina of targeting opposition leaders and their supporters. Sheikh Hasina has been credited for turning around Bangladesh's garment industry. Bangladesh is currently the world's 2nd largest garment exporter after China. Hasina is also credited for boosting the country's $416 billion economy. But her critics point at Bangladesh's current economic condition. The cost of living has gone up, wages not so much in comparison. Bangladesh is struggling to pay for its energy exports with shrinking dollar reserves and weakening taka. Sunday's election does not promise much change for Bangladesh. Voting is expected to begin at 8 a.m. local time and end at 4 p.m. with counting starting soon after. Bureau Report, WION World is One.